Okay, this is a fireside chat. I think it's 25 minutes. It's going to be a really interesting conversation. The reason why is because I'm like fundamentally ignorant of the topic area. And these the sort of conversations I enjoy the most because they're hugely educational for me. We're going to be talking about social advertising. I'm on social media all the time. I've got no clue how to put an ad out there or how to do it successfully. So no better person to tell us all about it than Ben Keeley. So Ben, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What did you do?
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'm Ben Keeley. I am the co-founder of Go. I basically lead our product and engineering teams. My background, very, very quickly, I have a programming background, but I essentially launched a social media ad agency, which I ran for nearly a decade. And we were doing social advertising for large enterprises, fast-growing businesses, you name it, everything but talent. And we were getting very good at convincing people to spend their money on various different things. And my co-founder at the time had just launched the job board. I said, we've got this problem. I got all these customers posting their jobs, but we're struggling to get candidates. I rely on Google, etc. And we'll talk about color lenses in a minute. And it was like, they're all on social media. How do I get in front of them? I was very biased. I said, well, social advertising, of course. We can target by job titles, skills, experience, you name it, we did it. And for me, that was nearly 10 years ago. But it was snowboard a little bit from then. So in summary, my background is social advertising, so I know the space very well, and then we just applied it to the world of talented and employer brands. So pleased to be here today.
Yeah, fantastic. I think we in the recruitment industry oftentimes underrate sort of the degree of interest and lack of interest that normal people have in different social media platforms. Like we in the room here are actually fairly abnormal. You think about it. Recruiters are the people that log into LinkedIn every day, don't you? It's fucking abnormal, right? Normal human beings don't do that. Now, how many people have got LinkedIn on their mobile phone? Hands up. Deeply abnormal. Deeply abnormal. A normal human being does not do this. And the reason why I kind of introduced this idea is because we are locked into this concept that LinkedIn is the everyday thing, but it's one social network that most people never use. Go ahead.
So, yeah, on that point, people nowadays, believe it or not, they have on average 7.7 social profiles that they use in any given month. So that's where they sort of split their time. I'm very sadly like 95% LinkedIn, but people do have much more interesting lives. They're on TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, Reddit. Reddit is the fastest growing network in terms of usage in the UK. Which obviously links in very nicely to ChatGPT, etc. So if you're, even though people, they have multiple profiles, that just means their time is split across all these different areas. So if you are just focusing on your sim, for example, and that's where you're publishing your jobs, you're missing out on like 90% of their time.
Yeah, and I want to dive into this concept of attention being fragmented. Because I think we've all had that sense, haven't we? We're kind of multi-screen, at least two screens on all the time, and we're getting sort of pinged all the time also. Do you have any stats at all in terms of like how much attention we're spending per sort of window, so to say, before we get interrupted and move on to something else?
Yeah, that's a good point. Overall, people are spending, on average, 4.5 hours a day on social, which is just insane if you think about it. It's more than half your working day. But in terms of online, it's now the remote working, it's like 8 hours on average across mobile apps. That people, if you have good exercise or really get into stories, you can go on your phone and look at settings. It'll tell you how much time you're spending on your mobile and how you're splitting it. So I won't look at it either. But it's a fascinating thing, and we have this challenge with our teams, which is they're constantly online and they're constantly got this context switching going on. So it's not just social media, it's constantly, you've got Teams pinging up, you've got Slack, and there's your time and attention to focus and actually get something done where you physically need to shut stuff off. And social's no different. You've got people who are switching between watching something on YouTube and having that play in the background while they scroll TikTok. You know what I mean? It's interesting.
Yeah. Did you watch the, was it the Matt Damon interview with Joe Rogan or something? And he talked about how filming was changing because nowadays you have to basically produce a film on the proviso that the other person's going to be looking at the second screen whilst they're in the movie theater. So how do you kind of chop up your story such that it is in, I don't know, a 5 second, you deliver some value in 5 seconds or something, because the person don't want to wait 60 seconds because they're on the phone and checking something else.
Yeah, I did watch that interview. It was fascinating. I mean, it was in relation to their new Netflix film, but it relates to social. What I love about social advertising, if you can love something about social advertising, is that adverts force you to say something meaningful and succinctly in seconds. Because if you think about you're scrolling on your feed, it's so busy. You must scroll past thousands of posts or ads, and something has to make you stop. And that's the creative and the copy which is on the ad. It's like what X and Twitter used to be. It used to force you 280 characters, and what was good about that is it really just forced you to be clear. I think where we are today is content is very generic. It's very easy now people to produce content, which means that we're in this space where your feeds are absolutely full of content, but it all looks pretty similar, and it's fairly generic in a lot of cases. So there's a lot of bland content, but the opportunity there is it doesn't take too much effort to really stand out, but you do need to have an opinion on social to stand out and share your thoughts and opinions.
All right. So is the aim of the game trying to capture someone's attention and get them to convert immediately? So you've got to have some sort of way to, grab them now, because otherwise you're never going to get them again, and get them to just click on something. Or is it to just be more ubiquitous with your brand, like just constantly pepper them all the time and just give up on conversions, I guess, and just try and create a fresh?
Peppering is a good way to put it. So they definitely need lots of touch points and across all the social networks is the reality. Because if you think someone's splitting their attention across quite plus social networks, if they see some content on Instagram and say it's really raw that they didn't know existed, unless they're having a terrible day, they probably don't click and apply right there and then. But if they'd see some more content on LinkedIn that later that day or TikTok and it's a bit more insightful, they basically go through a stage of being completely unaware of a role, an employer, through to considering it, through to taking action. So it very rarely happens after, and there's not an impulse. If I don't buy, it's a considered purchase, so to speak. So it takes multiple touch points. But one of the huge benefits of social versus, say, sort of traditional job boards is that you've got an opportunity to storytell across all these different social networks. So in a world where you've got LLMs deciding putting in different sources and deciding what they say about your employer brand, with social and social ads, you've got an opportunity to be very deliberate and very clear about the story you want to tell. And you can do that organically on social to a fairly wide audience, or you can be extremely targeted with paid advertising and tell other stories to exactly who you want to tell those stories to. And it could be, for example, your engineers talking about how great it is or the really difficult challenges they're solving, and that's very targeted to an engineering community on Reddit, for example. That's one of the benefits of social, is really just storytelling to exactly who you want to.
Yeah, so let's try and get some color behind this thing's story. We hear storytelling a lot from in our recruitment sort of firm. What do we mean by this precisely? So would it be articulating grand vision, for instance? Let's say I'm a green energy tech business and I've got are we getting massive reverb off this? I think so. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just thinking, like, what do you mean story? Can you unpack that first?
Yeah, I think Jim mentioned earlier about being authentic, being real. It's similar with social. It's not about sort of taking your EVP and sort of say this is broadcasting some statements out there. It's actually having real people, real employees telling stories in a very interactive format. So video, of course, is most consumed content type, but image, you tell them all these different stories in a targeted way across lots of different social networks, but where your audience is. Like, you don't just advertise everywhere for the sake of it, and it's very much where your audience hangs out. But the reality is nowadays that people do have their potentials a bit lost on social networks. But with social in particular, you do have this opportunity to be very interactive with your storytelling in terms of the media format versus sort of your static job piece.
Yeah, if I'm getting a picture of what this might look like, there's two questions in my mind is, I would say 5 years ago, this wouldn't be just a massive job of work, wouldn't it? Like if you're saying, okay, you got to just tell your story with the rich media across every platform, you're thinking about how many millions do I need for this? But one of the values I think with mobile sort of devices, the quality of the cameras we have, and also I guess with AI these days, is that content production cost has gone down. So potentially we could like produce the site a lot faster, but it still seems like a big tune. Like how much content are we producing here? Can you give us an idea in terms of the numbers of assets that need to be produced for something for land?
Yeah, I mean that's a big question. Of with the way things have gone, it is much easier, quicker, and lower cost to produce content. That's not to say you just want to produce a load of generic content. We do see across social the most. It can be someone just filming on their phone, just being very authentic. It can also be, we see well-produced videos still performing well as long as it's real people telling real stories. So I think we're in this stage where as long as you coming across authentic on social, then you'll get a good response rate. The challenge is where you've got people here still using sort of stock imagery. We're sort of past that phase. In terms of the amount of content, that's a very different question. And you basically want to test as much as you physically can and have the ability to test with social without being overwhelming. Most of our campaigns, they maybe have 6 different types of adverts in them on average, but we have some where they will be 50. It's whatever you sort of able and capable.
Yeah, okay, I still need a bit more color on this, Ben. So can you give us a case? So for instance, it's a recruitment, so people need to recruit a role. You've advised them or they've sought advice and they've created this Let's Be Everywhere sort of media campaign. What type of content are we talking about? What kind of stories? And basically what was the outcomes?
So the optimal format when advertising on social for attraction is, let's just say, for example, you're hiring for, let's go for engineers at a nuclear site, which are a very common one for us. These are very skilled workers. And a campaign is typically got anywhere between 6 and 10 adverts. And those adverts, again, showing across 7 different social profiles. But the way to think of those adverts are, you've got, it goes back to the classic marketing funnel. You've got adverts which are very top of the funnel. They're the initial adverts that people are seeing. They make people aware of employer brand and make people aware of the vacancy, but they're not very direct. They're just there to capture the initial attention. Because if you get any kind of engagement, it means that you can then re-advertise later stage in the funnel. And then at the middle of the funnel, you've got different types of content, which is generally giving more insight into what employers like. It could be colleagues talking about what it's like to really work there. It could be Glassdoor reviews, although we see a little less of that. But it's more insightful as to what it's like in terms of who you're going to be working with, what it feels like to work there. You have the opportunity to tell that story. And then the final adverts are usually when candidates have had quite a few touch points. At this point, they're gone through the sort of awareness, they're thinking about that, maybe have a conversation with their partner about actually applying for a job. Because the passive audience, typically, they weren't on job boards looking for any role. And these ones are a bit more direct. They're about their roles closing, the salary and the pay is this, the benefits of this. They're a lot more direct. So you tailor your content to basically the mindset at which the candidates are at. There's maybe 3 different buckets that you can tailor it to.
And you know that through, it's basically ad retargeting, right?
Ad retargeting, yeah, absolutely. So you can do I won't plug Gaia, but I will. So basically, if you do advertising on social outside of Gaia, you can do retargeting in a very easy way in which if someone goes to your website and doesn't basically complete an application, you can retarget on Facebook. we can't do is cross-channel retargeting. So if, for example, a pool of candidates engage with some adverts on Facebook, they watch a bit of the video, but they don't do anything else, we can show them more adverts on their other favorite social networks based on their engagement on Facebook until they can take the action they ultimately need to do. So they could actually see like 5 adverts across all their favorite social networks before they actually apply. And that could happen if they're a heavy social user. It could be a couple of days. If they're less so, it could be a couple of weeks. It's very much tailored to their behavior.
It would be really good to get like some proper data on this, wouldn't it? For instance, someone who's addicted on TikTok, for instance, the 7 hours a day, like how many ads that person needs in order for them to click on something. That would be. Do you have that information? Do you have that data?
Yeah.
Distribute. Tell us.
Per ad, the frequency is typically anywhere between 3 and 10 times that they'll see the ad before they take an action on any given social network. And then on average is 4 to 5 social channels that they see adverts on before they convert.